Hey, this is Dag, and you're listening to Beyond Trek Podcast.
On a red alert.
Welcome back, everybody, to Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Dag. In the house with me, I've got Big J and Renzo. We're here to talk to you about Picard Season 2, Episode 7, Monsters. So, settle up, and this is your spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
I'm excited about this because I did a fresh shave and shower. I look slick.
You do. You look very nice and photoshopped.
Very
Nice and
smooth.
clean.
Very smooth.
Looked like I was edited in. Okay.
Very smooth. Not like the demon that appears in this episode. Is definitely not smooth. The demon had
No.
trypophobia on his face.
Right. Ew.
Well, getting started with it. So our episode begins in what looks like a therapy session. It's Picard in his tux that he'd been in at the gala, and he's seated across from what looks like a Starfleet psychiatrist. He's got 3 pips. He looks very serious. It is the famous and legendary James Callis, the actor. And he is very well known from being Gaius Baltar in Battlestar Galactica, where he is a very good character there.
Unbelievable how he played that. Loved it.
And there are such good parallels between that show and this season of Picard too. So definitely an intentional reference to pick him to play this role.
It's weird having James be the head character now.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when BSG came out, I thought it was actually Siddig El-Fadil who was playing the character. I legit thought it was him.
Everyone gets them
Very close.
crossed.
Especially because I was 25. We didn't have all the plethora of internet that we have now. I hadn't seen Siddig on the air in 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a cursory. It wasn't like I did my research or anything like that. I didn't get too far in before I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not Alexander. But
There was a photo of them online. I believe it was from Mission Chicago. But it might have been Facebook, something. I can't remember where I was doom scrolling. But Siddig and James were in the picture together, proving that they are 2 separate people.
perfect.
Dag, you're muted, as is our tradition. But also, there was an interview many years ago talking to the Battlestar Galactica showrunners, producers, writers, and it was asked to, and I'm paraphrasing, it was asked to Ronald D. Moore, the creator of the new Battlestar Galactica, if he made a conscious choice of casting James Callis in that show and his resemblance to Siddig El-Fadil, and he couldn't unsee it. He said, no, didn't realize that, but now I can't, basically he can't unsee it now. And it's very close. In fact, for a moment in that scene, when the psychiatrist is talking, I thought it was going to be Dr. Bashir.
So
Not that I'm
legit
not
can't hear me?
disappointed at all. Yeah, can hear you now.
Huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you just fine.
I wasn't on mute. That's weird.
It's the universe telling me it's not ready to speak yet.
Thanks, Zoom.
Yeah, no, but his role on Battlestar Galactica was as the brilliant but troubled scientist, if you haven't seen the show, who seems to have an inner demon speaking to him constantly, advising him on things, giving him advice for things that he shouldn't be able to know. The actual reveal at the end of the show is that that was an angel all along, and that's when lots of people burned their merch from that show. So
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Kara's
Oh.
disappearance pissed off a lot of people too.
I'll be honest, one of my best friends was obsessed with BSG, right? And
Mhm.
he'd collected, that famous picture of the whole cast doing the Last Supper posing
Yeah.
Yes,
across the dinner table.
absolutely.
He had it signed with every single member of the cast, and when the show wrapped and he saw the last episode, he sold it. He was like, "Nope, I don't care enough.
Holy
this show
shit.
ended with shit, so
That
away
was
this goes."
Game of Thrones, yo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also not a fan of that ending. I'll be honest. I think the show should have ended after New Caprica's storyline, or at the New Caprica storyline. But whatever. This is no longer the BSG Beyond BSG podcast.
Yeah, the Final Five thing definitely ticket places that were not expected. But you're right. It is not the Beyond Battlestar podcast. That's another show.
Happy to get into it sometime. But okay, so in this scene, we get this sort of like psychoanalysis of Picard by a psychiatrist that's like probing questions here, probing questions there, like tries to get him to reveal things, but Picard is essentially just dodging his questions. Not that his questions are great, but they are questions that at least obliquely a psychiatrist is going to ask.
You got to soften them up.
I don't know. It was the technique from the psychiatrist was pretty aggressive, right? Like, even your friends call you captain. Like, who are you really? Like, that's a...
It's also not a real psychiatrist, so...
Sure. But the presentation of the scene it's supposed to make us think that. But yeah, he's trying to coax Picard into, like, speaking his actual inner demons and, like, reveal what actually bothers him about stuff. And Picard is just generally evasive, so...
Yeah.
I think the approach fit with the kind of person that Picard is. You have to take more of a hammer and chisel at him to get him to open up.
Plenty of time with the psychiatrist. He spent a lot of time with a therapist, as a counselor on the ship, and she never had to use this kind of technique to get him to reveal stuff.
Because she could just read his mind.
No, she could read his emotions. Not quite the same.
So, what do you think about Baltar? Not Baltar. In a Generations uniform.
I thought it looked great on him. It was the coloration that was a little strange for me. The gray uniform made me think like, okay, maybe he's from like Section 31 or some sort of like intelligence unit. I don't know. I wasn't thinking he was just a straight up generic doctor, psychiatrist, scientist in blue. So I was trying to figure out like, okay, well, who is this dude? Like, is he supposed to represent like the Kovich of this era? Like, what is he?
It did. I know it was kind of sort of looking like the Generations / DS9 first 4 or so seasons, but it looked different. I'm not sure if that was... I don't think that was the intention behind it as much as it was like one of those kind of in transition uniforms or something that's specific to Starfleet mental health services, something like that. You're not quite a doctor or scientist to be wearing blue. It's kind of like a whole different branch, and I don't know, more gray at the top.
I've always liked so this is just fan canon or head canon or like just beta canon stuff, but that grays would be reserved for like intelligence, and then greens would be like for the equivalent of Starfleet's Marines, that kind of thing, right? In the addition to the 3 basic colors. And white would be for diplomats, strict Starfleet diplomats. Right. I liked that.
Well, Discovery has changed white up for us.
I know. It's now doctors, which is cool too, right? Like that one fits really well as well. But just the fact that I knew that stuff from beta canon or from fan head canons and such made me think that this was some sort of like, maybe it's like a memory that he's re-experiencing sometime where he had to deal with like a Section 31 interrogator, and he's presenting like a psychiatrist, and they're trying to extract information. I don't know. My head was going in kind of weird places during the scene, but I liked the scene.
I think my favorite theory is that this scene is sort of representative, because we know this scene is pulling elements from Picard's mind into it. But I kind of thought with the Generations thing that this was a debriefing after the destruction of the Enterprise D, and he's debriefing on Renee and Robert, which is a very personal crisis that he went through during Generations.
Interestingly, though, he calls this his ready room, right? But this is neither the D and the E or the like Stargazer ready room.
Well,
right?
I mean, it may be a ready room that was temporarily assigned to him between the 2 ships. That was a detail that I was kind of like, okay, I can fudge that. But more importantly to me was like, I thought he put himself in a therapy session that he had debriefing on the Enterprise D, probably prior to some kind of court-martial that would have to happen because of a...
It wasn't his fault.
Lost.
Riker crashed the ship.
Well,
He left the ship. He's still responsible.
It's true, and it's a really weird reason why he would choose to become a Klingon prisoner in the moment. But we can get into the generations another time. But
Right.
Jefferson, you always want to argue generations.
I can't help it.
ultimately,
I'm trying not to.
ultimately, I just kind of felt like they changed the names and faces of things in his mind. But this is sort of reminiscent of when he lost the D. It's in between places.
Yeah.
Okay.
I almost thought this was like a holographic psychological program thing, but we definitely find out who this face belongs to by the end of this episode.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that's where my head was at when I first saw this scene, not knowing, what would come later, naturally. But it was a good scene. Like I said, the scene ends with the psychiatrist telling Picard to take the floating hologram of the sun, and that he start by thinking this, tell a story involving the sun, right? And as like your starting point. So Picard starts telling this story about a queen with fiery red hair. She was a woman, and he gets made fun of for providing extra details there by the psychiatrist. Another example of why I thought, this dude's a dick.
Well, but again, Picard thinks he's a dick too. Picard's memories of this person is that this person was not a safe, nice person. And that's why he's superimposed in this position, because Picard doesn't like opening up, and this isn't Deanna.
Yeah, it's not somebody he knows and trusts.
That's why, and I think Picard is just guarded by nature. You add in this stranger, and he's just kind of all walled off.
Yeah, no, I think Picard's behavior here is very much in character with him, unless, even for his close friends, Picard is very guarded, right? Like, remember the end of All Good Things? I waited way too long to come play poker with you guys was essentially the last bit of the episode, right? Yes. 7 years before he was willing to fraternize with his senior officers enough to play poker.
Right.
That's a very reserved man. And the psychiatrist calls him out on it, right? The whole line about how like even your friends call you captain. So the psychiatrist is pulling on the right threads. I just think the way he's doing it is not super productive for the most part, which makes sense then when we remember that this is just his imaginings of an encounter that never actually happened or is constructed from things.
Yeah, it's a jumbled encounter based on childhood trauma and other things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Beverly always leaned more towards calling him Jean-Luc, more so than anyone else, of course. Anyone else, it sounded odd.
That's one of those exceptions that proves the rule. Like, Beverly was special. Everybody else called him Captain.
Well, I mean, Raffi called him JL for all of last season.
Right.
Interestingly, Raffi's canon history, she's always called him JL.
Okay.
Ever since she was his attaché in investigating the pending Romulan supernova, she just started calling him JL basically from the start.
I wonder if we're taking the Spock and McCoy pretty much always called Captain Kirk Jim and expecting that Picard should have a senior officer or two that would kind of be on that same level. But no, and that's been brought up before throughout the run of TNG, is that he just seems to be so formal and so walled off and guarded. And you're right, Beverly special. She's pretty much the only one that says name. I can only think of rarely, and I believe it was just
only in
Riker
private, right?
who ever called. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
you're right. He's got to loosen up some.
Do you remember the fan outcry when Raffi was calling him JL and how inappropriate people thought that was? And this is part of it because everybody thought that he should be addressed as Admiral. Like even the fans are kept at arm's length from this character.
I mean, Rios has been calling him Admiral this entire season too, right? Sure. And Rios is like treating him like his adoptive father. And as far as anybody on this cast goes, I feel like Picard treats Rios like an adoptive son. Elnor, yes, but Elnor was kept at arm's length for decades. Yeah. Right? So
you know what it reminds me of, and I don't know if this really has anything to do with it, but one of my neighbors, I still refer to he and his wife as Mr. and Miss, like I always did when I was a kid. I'm a grown-ass adult, but I still do that. Same with someone, if I knew a coach in high school or whatever, that's no longer a coach, which I've run across, still call him coach. It's just, you get familiar with it, and it's just, it sticks.
I'm right there with you, right? So my best friend from elementary, middle school, and high school, his parents were Mr. and Mrs. Felipe.
Yeah.
Even though she did not want me to call her Miss Felipe or Mrs. Felipe for very long. By like high school, she was just telling me, call me Lou, call me Lou, call me Lou. Nope. I saw him like a couple years ago, just before the pandemic, and even then, hi, how you doing, Miss Felipe? How's everything? And
doesn't feel right.
Call me Lou. So
I'm not saying her first name, doesn't feel right.
Exactly. It's just what you become accustomed to as a point of respect, right? So
yeah,
whatever. I don't think that the whole not letting people call you anything other than captain is all that crazy. I'm sure that most Starfleet captains probably maintain some level of professional distance from their crews.
Yeah.
But it's still something that a psychiatrist is going to tug on when you're trying to understand who are you inside, right? Like, this is the same thing that Raffi brought up at the beginning of the season. Remember when it was like, you can turn off your emotions, but the rest of us have to feel things, essentially? Like, you can fake your emotions, the rest of us actually have them. Raffi was distraught and freaking out. It's not like she was really thinking about it, but that's clearly something that she thought about before. Anyways, this scene just continues with like Picard describing this queen with red hair, a sorcerer who lost his powers. They're trying to slay a noble prince, and he's clearly just trying to tell his own story in this fictionalized, fantastical situation. He goes into details about how like the queen tells the prince that he would be expected to lift people up, to lead them with inspiring speeches, but the prince doesn't think he can, and this is all literally just Picard telling his own story fictionalized. So it's an interesting way to approach telling this story.
Am I the only one that kind of thinks that this is not quite necessary? How badly do we really need the whole storyline of what he's going through in his head? I may be in the minority, but I just kind of feel like this is slowing down the season.
Here's something interesting. My mom was really upset about the speed of the season. She was like, we're 5 episodes in, because this was back then. We're 5 episodes in. We've barely gotten anywhere. So far, we're just trying to like handle little hijinks that get in the way. We don't even know what the big problem is.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking more along the lines of like, Star Trek recently has definitely dived into mental and emotional well-being and handling those things and coping with those things as part of their plot points. In addition to that, I absolutely suspect that the character growth that's happening in these scenes that feel like they're just languishing and wasting time is going to be essential to changing what happened at the beginning of the season. I think that the character growth, the lessons that are going to be learned, are going to play a role in making a different choice. And it goes back to All Good Things when Q is lambasting Picard and talking about, in that infinitesimal moment, you were open to ideas you would never have considered, choices you never would have made. And I think that that's going to be the ethos that's going to have to play through Picard's decision when faced with the faceless queen again.
So I'm with you, right? Like, Big J, I agree. It definitely does slow down the season. No disagreement there, right? But I think that the reason why they're slowing it down is actually pretty good. So this was one of the complaints people had about Discovery season 3 and 4. Their pacing was unpredictable. Everything happens all at once. Nothing happens for a couple scenes. Everything happens, nothing happens, and so forth and so on, right? Here we've just had a slow burn, right? It seems like there's a lot going on some episodes, but really there's not. It's just been like a slow buildup of everything getting into the right places. This scene, I think, is just here, or these scenes, because there are several of them, are just here to show us why Picard behaves in certain situations the way he does, why he is such a gallant, noble, statesman-like diplomat sometimes, and then other times it's like, fuck it, the line must be drawn here, kind of thing, right? Because those are two different approaches to similar situations that can be handled in either way, right? But here we're going to try and understand a bit more about Picard, because we don't really know much about Picard's like childhood. We know that he never liked his dad. We hadn't really heard of his mom much until this season.
He hated his brother.
Once, yeah, he and his brother did not get along until they fucking fought each other in a field, like amongst the vines of grapes. So like his childhood has been traumatic. Uncovering some of that in the character, I think, is important, right? And they're doing it in a way, and I want to point this out, that I think is very healthy. Because you see this in some shows and some movies that like your trauma, the trauma that you've overcome, your damage, helps you become stronger. And I don't think that's necessarily a good way to present things. I think it is a healthier way to present things as your trauma is a part of you. Doesn't mean it makes you stronger or weaker. It's just a part of you, and you have to accept that. But doesn't mean you have to like grow from it. Not all trauma helps you grow.
Right.
So.
Right.
I think the one thing that I thought of that was bothering me about this whole plot line, one is if it doesn't tie directly into the change of decision that Picard makes once we're back on the Stargazer with the Faceless Queen, it would further say that, well, but that was a complete waste. What was that for? The other thing also is I'm having a hard time believing, if they go the route, Renzo, that you're talking about, that it's somehow in his childhood that something reliving and going through there is what affects the choices and decisions he makes in regards to what happens on the Stargazer with the Borg Queen. I would think, if anything, it would have been something more in adult life. That's just me. For example, I can't think of...
There's more to this story. They tell us that numerous times, right? Like,
yeah, I just wish they would get to it. You know, it's... Dag's right. We're 5 episodes in, and...
Dag's mom.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Dag's mom.
Dag's mom watches the show, by the way, so say hi.
Hi, Dag's mom.
In fact, from my understanding, like half of Dag's family watches the show. I learned that from the wedding.
It's true.
Nice.
I think everybody at the wedding has seen the show at some point or another. I have a friend, totally off subject. I have a friend who just recently discovered Star Trek because she is with child and she's got not a whole lot to do, I guess. And so she's watching through Star Trek on the TV, and she's like, okay, I need to link to your podcast now because I understand what this is all about. I'm like, all right.
Here it be.
Cool.
Awesome.
Good.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Please go ahead, BJ. I didn't mean to interrupt too much.
That was just kind of... I put myself in the shoes of Picard, and I can't think of a single thing from that age in childhood that would have affected or influenced any bad decision I made that could have been better, like what happens with Picard. Just me. I think
that means you just had a good childhood then.
You could have had a good childhood.
Yeah.
But one thing about childhood trauma is that trauma scales with age. So if you're a small child and you get attacked by a big dog, and you look at that in retrospect and you're like, I'm an adult, a big dog can't hurt me like a big dog can hurt a small child. That's one thing. But you're not afraid of the big dog. You're afraid of the thing that was bigger than you that hurt you when you were too small to defend yourself. There's not a lot of hard data that goes into childhood trauma. It scales with age, and it's scarier with age, and we're always afraid of those moments. It's why a lot of people have that freeze moment when confronted with things that happened to them in the past, because as a kid you can't defend yourself from those things, and you freeze as you relive the moment of that. So I'm really interested in, we saw it with Kid Picard here. He was left in that little dungeon area, and he's like, I have to stay here. I have to wait for my mom to find me. And it's just one example of, what I'm hoping, again, like I did last season, was a payoff. But last season, everything fell into place in the last episode, so we'll see what happens.
I'll reserve judgment for the very last episode of the season when we finally discover everything we're wanting to know. And I do say that sarcastically.
It was Gary Seven's fault all along.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So this whole little montage of him telling the story and then like the actual seeing the little kid Picard doing things, it ends up with them running down to the basement. The tunnel is under the house with the queen being pulled away by a monster lurking in the shadows, kind of thing. So
weird that they got Black Panther in this episode.
Okay, that's a take.
You're gonna have to explain that
Audience,
one to me.
what do you think? You can see this picture. It's very clearly Black Panther. That's like definitely like Soulstone powered though. I don't know if you're looking at the same image as I am. But
It's just the one where it was like the face in the glass and you see like the eyes light up. That one.
Oh, I was getting Batman vibes. I know the picture you're talking about.
really,
Yeah.
Batman in the middle of a
Yes.
fantastical jungle. Batman wouldn't be caught dead there.
Good point.
All right, so then we cut to seeing Picard back inside of Teresa's clinic with little things on the sides of his head, and he's kind of like convulsing a little bit, having a bad dream. So it looks pretty serious.
Mhm.
So we go back to the now we're seeing it from a different perspective. This is after the intro. Raffi's just out loud wondering what's going on inside of Picard's head. Seven is at this point bringing up the point that somebody should have said sooner, like, where the hell is Girardi? Like, where is she?
It's too quiet here. Whereas you're right. It's no one really said anything about her being missing. They've traveled back in time. They've got to watch pretty much everything they do so as not to do a butterfly effect thing. But yet they went quite some time without wondering where the only person in our group is at. Little suspect.
So it's only been a couple hours since the gala, right? Like they're in the
Mhm.
morning. They clearly stayed overnight at the clinic, and they should definitely be worrying about where she is. But missing her when they had to rush across to the clinic, less crazy to me, right? Like if you're not there with the group, you get left behind immediately. We can catch up with you after, because otherwise Picard dies on the floor. So
Yeah. It's a little bit. I had beef with that, but yeah, I'll just roll with
you
it.
see my point though, right? Like
Yeah.
if they didn't need her to go get Picard medical attention, they just probably figured that she would check in, but she doesn't because Borg nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so Seven even points out the whole spontaneous singing at the gala. Then Rios reports that actually she kissed me, like she kissed me, and Raffi is very curious about that. So
Not that I'm complaining, but yeah, she kissed me.
but
That was what I. The
That was his
vibe I got
vibe.
from him.
I kind of agree, although he seems far more interested in Teresa at the moment than in Girardi. Agnes.
Sure.
I'm still convinced that Rios stays.
I hope not.
The way that he is in love with the 21st century, I'm convinced that this Rios stays.
Mm-hmm. And this is, Dag, I think you're right. And this is why I say this. Spoiler for anyone who hasn't watched the trailer or heard any news about season 3 of Picard. But to me, it feels like everyone in this show, this is it. This is it for them in this season. Season 3 is strictly going to be Picard with his next gen crew. So I think whatever they decide to do with the season 1 and 2 Picard crew, they're pretty much at liberty to do whatever because they're not coming back.
You know, I would like to believe that, but I also don't want to set myself up for disappointment. I think we're bringing back the TNG crew, but they're not all going to be together, guns blazing. I think there's going to be a path woven between 1 or 2 or maybe 3 at the most of them with these characters from the last
I'll go
2
on a limb.
seasons.
I actively hope you're wrong. I actively hope that they have the TNG cast on for like cameo kind of things. Maybe they're around for a couple episodes, but like I don't want a TNG reunion show.
I'm not saying that like I'm not saying that I don't want that. Like, I want them. I would love
Yes.
for the TNG crew to get back together, guns blazing, let's go, let's do it. But I'm protecting my sanity.
I think that's what's going to happen. Well, in any case,
I hope not.
Regardless of how we think season 3 is going to go and what they may do with these characters now, I do also agree with the feeling that Rios is staying behind.
And there can always be another Rios.
Yeah.
Sure.
Time travel shenanigans, timey-wimey wobbly bullshit.
Maybe this is how he turns out to be his own great grandfather.
No, we're not doing any predestination paradoxes.
Oh yeah, bring it on.
All right, so
But I don't think Jay knows that the symbol from the clinic was on the medical boxes on the La Serena at the beginning of the series. So
No, I missed that.
yeah,
again, I think that I'm not
the
sure that
butterfly
that's something.
symbol. The butterfly symbol. Why would there be a butterfly on the medical crates and a butterfly in the clinic at the same time, Renzo?
Because the whole episode or the whole season has references to the butterfly effect, so they're just kind of like throwing us a bone on that.
So
Boo.
the medical supplies with the butterfly on them are nothing to do with the medical clinic that had the butterfly on it?
Come
I don't
on,
know.
Renzo.
I'm
Play
just
ball.
not sure. I don't want to jump to that one's conclusions.
I'm bought in.
Maybe
man.
they just reused a prop.
That would be terrible.
Yeah.
That would be.
I mean, we're not talking
Piss
same
poor.
bird of prey explosion 2 movies in a row.
We save money between generations and Undiscovered Country for that, though.
I
Not
know,
to
right?
mention that scene was reused like 50 times on DS9.
Hey, it was a
Ah.
very nice explosion. All right,
Have
so
Seven and Raffi gotten back to La Serena yet?
that's where we are right now.
Okay.
They return. Rios is staying with Picard, and Rios asked Talon if she was sure her jury-rigged mind meld would work, and Talon is like, "Nope, not at all," which is an honest answer. We see her pulling these things out of like her case at this point, so it's pretty cool. Now we see Raffi and Seven back on La Sirena, and Raffi's like, I don't like the idea of Girardi and Rios getting back together. I think I'll quit the gang if that does happen. Seven thinks it's funny. And then Raffi and Seven banter about they're getting their own relationship back together. They're the main event. We'll grow old together and be happy sitting on a park bench, tripping teenagers on floaty things. And then Seven responds with, and I'll be much better at it than you. Which is
I
great.
think the relationship, seeing a relationship between Seven of Nine and Raffi, to me, I can buy that a whole lot more than I can Rios and Agnes. That just seems like a mismatch to me. Like, I'm not surprised
Opposites
that
attract.
it didn't work out. Yeah, you know, I think that was a bad rumor started by someone that was not happy in their marriage.
Anyways, so they start trying to figure out where Girardi is. They go sit down on the consoles at the front of La Sirena, and the controls go blank as soon as they start touching it. They're locked out. Things are encrypted. Seven immediately determines that this is encryption of Borg origin. So she comes to the conclusion very quickly that the Borg couldn't take control of Girardi.
Want to know something really funny about the display that shows the Borg thing?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Borg font that I have. You can actually translate that into an alpha character. It's great.
Oh, nice. At least it wasn't an Omega, because that would be the worst lockout.
But
Yeah. So you speak Borg now, okay?
We
Or at least you
are
can
fluent.
you can understand it.
We are from Klaatu.
Help
All
us
right.
out here, Renzo.
people
We're
are
like 2
freaking out.
scenes in and we've been recording for an
I
hour.
know. Back to the clinic. Talon attaches the devices to Picard's head. She puts on like this earpiece, which has a very suspicious point in
Yeah.
the ear.
Mm-hmm.
Both Dag and I called that one, which I thought was great.
Mm-hmm.
Obnoxiously obvious.
Which I got something to say about that. Remind me later.
Sure.
I'll-
Anyways,
I'll write myself a note.
good idea. Good idea. She sits down and activates the device. Her eyes go white. She goes inside Picard's subconscious. They're under the Chateau Picard, so they're inside of the catacombs or whatever, the tunnels. And then we cut back to Picard in the psychiatrist's office. he starts like getting pretty angry at the psychiatrist, that he's the judge and jury of all things meritorious is one of the accusations. This is where we get the thing that you guys mentioned before about human psychology being a lesser model, but a betazoid wouldn't get through your walls. So it's kind of a bleak situation that we're seeing for Picard, right? Like he seems like he's really backed into a corner by this psychiatrist.
Which I think maybe that's where he needs to be, because he's not going to be very open and forthcoming on his own if you go with the nice approach. But again, that's just me. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist. What do I know?
That's the kind of therapy I like, though. The one that's like upfront, call me on my bullshit.
You like aggressive negotiations.
I like aggressive therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the psychiatrist then reports to Picard that he's going to recommend that he be relieved of command, lest he take his crew on a suicide mission just to feel something. There are thousands of ways to die in space, and so forth and so on. So
that gets a rise out of Picard, though, saying those words.
Yep.
There's 1,000 ways to die out there. Because it gets repeated.
Do you think it was that got the rise, or the threat to get him relieved from command?
No, it was. He literally says there's 1,000 ways to die out there, and then later in the episode, as Maurice, he says there's 1,000 ways to die out there. That's why it triggers him. Well, when I say trigger, I don't mean he goes off. I just mean he looks at him here in this scene. He goes, "What did you say?"
Mm-hmm.
It's striking a chord with him.
So Picard tries to continue the story that he's making up. That's basically his childhood. Talon is in the dungeons exploring Picard's subconscious. There were a couple audio clips when she first boots into the Matrix there. We hear, "I am Locutus of Borg." We hear a bit from the Inner Light. We hear sentences from major Picard episodes. There was one from There Are Four Lights. Like there were many traumatic episodes, especially psychologically traumatic episodes, referenced in this little opening bit.
I picked up the ones from Best of Both Worlds Part 1. In the Inner Light, that makes sense, but I believe I completely missed what it was he said that was from There Are Four Lights episode. Shit, what was that one called?
Chain of Command.
It's probably not that important, but
Ensigns
yeah, I
of
just
Command,
missed
but
it. Yeah.
Chain of Command.
Chain of Command.
Chain
That's
of
what
Command.
it is. Sorry, I was trying to read your lips because you didn't actually say anything that time.
I was whispering, and apparently my audio is not capturing that, so there we go.
No.
Yeah, Ensigns of Command was S3E2, I believe.
It sounds about right.
All right.
Anyway,
Going back to the plot of this episode, Talon is talking to John Luke, the little John Luke, trying to convince him that she's here to help. He's like, "No, I have to stay here." They start hearing more rattling noises. The doors start being shaken, right? Picard explains, little Picard explains that his mother had been taken by one of the monsters, and everything in the dungeons is on the monster's side. And that's when the doors slam shut again, and they seem like they're trapped. And then the prince takes Talon and leads her deeper into the dungeons.
Yeah. I don't have anything more.
Back to the psychiatrist's office we go.
Yeah.
At this point, the psychiatrist is like, "Our hour-long session was up, and you can leave at any time," which really reminded me of the Kovich scene with Culber, where it's like, "You've got 30 minutes. I've got a 6:30 kind of thing."
Yes.
And then
one
winks out.
thing that I really like about the set that they're in here is it reminds me of when Cisco was Admiral Ross's attaché on that station after DS9 had been taken. And that's the vibe that I'm feeling here. That's why I think this is Picard's ready room in between assignments.
You could be right.
I mean, it's total
maybe.
speculation. This is inside his head. Who knows what this room really is? But it just seems to me that between the Enterprise destruction and the Enterprise E's launch, Picard needs a place to do business. He's still a captain in the fleet.
But he doesn't have a ship. I don't know why he'd have a ready room rather than just an office.
True.
Well, but that's what he calls his office, is his ready room. And maybe that's just what he called it.
Maybe.
That's a good point. So I have like 4 different names for the room I'm sitting in right now. So yeah. So I could see where to him he could be calling it ready room, office, so on and so forth.
It's also like a temporary office. He doesn't plan on staying here. He probably already knows that the Sovereign class is well into design phase and is going to be prototyping soon. There will be a USS Sovereign that's documented in, what is it, the Sum of All Fears or something like that? I don't remember the name of the episode. Renzo, go.
Okay, so they go back and forth. This description of Picard as being ethical, diplomatic, and cultured, an affinity for the arts, intellectual thought, but perpetually untethered from the ways of the heart is what he's accused of being, which we know that Laris would agree with him because he is emotionally distant. He doesn't have that part of his life. He even questions it himself when he goes to see Guinan in the first episode, right? So this scene is definitely analyzing the deep psyche of Picard and making him question it, which is occasionally healthy. He gets told that he is very difficult to be open with, let people in.
Oh boy, don't we know it.
Yeah. And then Picard starts hearing the sounds of banging doors and asks like what it is, and then the psychiatrist seems to distract him of that. It's the ever righteous Jean-Luc, right? Like it's a very bizarre scene. Like the almost dreamlike quality of these scenes lends for them to be misinterpretable, right? Like you can interpret these things many ways.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anyways, so back to the dungeons. Talon and the Princeling are continuing to flee a monster. It's hiding in a knight's armor, right? And then it reaches out and starts grabbing at them. They have to find a white door, but it's never in the same place for long. Like this is their whole quest. Like it sounds like a D&D adventure.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? Dag, that would be right up your alley. Well, both of you guys on the D&D metaphors.
Then the horned monster grabs the prince, and then the one that has trypophobia face grabs Talon by the throat.
It's just Ryan Reynolds Deadpool. It's fine.
I would love some Ryan Reynolds in Star Trek. You'd probably enjoy it too.
Oh my god.
We do have Ryan Reynolds. His name is Rios.
Maybe in the Tarantino movie we can get Ryan Reynolds in it.
Oh my
that
god.
would be great.
And you're suggesting a Tarantino Star Trek.
Well,
I'm not saying that.
Tarantino,
I don't want to
down
see it
with it
happen.
First. That would be amazing. Get some Samuel L. Jackson up in there. I'm tired of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking starship. And then he starts shooting Cardassians. But
All right, so cutting back to Teresa's clinic, Teresa shows up with Ricardo, her son. He's wearing a little space helmet, and Rios is bantering like, "Oh, a nice little EVA suit." He's 9. Oh, it's a nice little spaceman costume.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. She goes to go look at Picard, but the door is locked, and she gets right up into Rios's face. This is my clinic. You don't lock me out of any place. She asserts her authority correctly, and then she's allowed into the room. He unlocks the door, and she sees what's going on with the white milked eyes on Talon, the weird device, and she was her shit, which is completely correct for a doctor to do.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think the attitude that Rios has about this of Deanna Troi from First Contact, at some point you just need to give up on the whole we're normal people that are just here. You've got to just say, you know what, we're from outer space, we're from the future, shit's going down, we're gonna get things done if we just get rid of the whole facade and just roll with it, hope for the best. And I think that's why Rios caved a little easier than maybe expected. It just, to me, it didn't seem like you put up a whole lot of fight, considering, all right, no matter what I do, we can't reveal that we're from the future.
Rios has always been kind of ready to play it fast and loose on temporal stuff in this season. Like, he hasn't been the one that's been anal about it. He wanted to go with his gun or with a phaser out there, had to be told, no, leave that behind.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think Rios is of the captains that are going to have friends with temporal investigations. I feel like temporal investigations would probably hate Rios. But yeah, so he tells Teresa to keep an open mind, and she still like loses it, and she's right to do so. She is right to freak out. And then Rios is like slowly walking towards her, and she like calls him like, "Why are you walking towards me like a serial killer?" And then again, she is right to freak out because that was a very weird, suspicious bit going on. So Rio says that he needs to try and explain, but I need to do it without breaking time.
So he made it sound more confusing by saying how he needed to explain the confusing situation.
Listen, she's from a world where Marvel movies exist. She's probably seen Doctor Who, right? Like, she can understand the concept of time travel.
Okay. Yeah. And for anyone who is not sure what we're talking about, I think it was 2 reviews back that we canonized the Marvel Cinematic Universe as taking place in the Star Trek universe.
There's
Theory
some
that day.
overlap.
But yeah, some overlap. We won't get into that too much.
Yeah. All right. So Talon starts having some convulsions at this point as the creature inside of Picard's mind is like strangling her. It's not her journey, the monster is saying. But Talon knows how to fight, so she headbutts him, rips the chains off, and demands the release of the prince. And the monster just like laughs at her. So she may not be supposed to be there, but she can at least fight back. She's not powerless inside of Picard's mind. Teresa says that he's not responding to the medication, so he needs to go to the hospital because she's not equipped to handle this. So Rios does probably the most hilarious thing I think from this episode. And he's like,
I need to do hickey.
Yeah, calls the La Sirena and asks for like a stabilizer for Picard's brain, right? And a device just like appears in his hands while she's looking at it.
Yeah.
And her face is great. The actress does a fantastic job conveying the what the fuckery of this moment for her.
Yeah.
Delightful. And I think that Ricardo is also there in the room, though I'd have to go rewatch the scene to see where he is, because he was right there with them too. So
I didn't see him in the scene, but I think it would probably be safe to assume that he's in that room because he is a very nosy kid.
Oh yes.
So he's somewhere in there.
Yep. So he hands to Teresa the neural stabilizer, a neural oscillator, and he tells her to use it on Picard to save his life, which is crazy.
And she's another, what the fuck?
Yeah. Which is crazy, because if anybody should do this, it should be him, because at least he knows where the buttons are on it. She has no idea what she's doing.
But
wave a shiny light over it, it'll make it feel better, kind of thing.
don't we remember when they had the magic wand of crazy in the last season? That was just like, you just imagine what you want, and it works.
That's true.
They got that from the synths, Coppelius
Yeah.
Station. So it's like, what if they still have that? They're just like, here, have this thing. Just imagine how it works.
Weird. Very
it was
weird. But yeah, so she does it, and Picard stabilizes, which is presumably because of the device, though not necessarily, right? Because Talon is fighting off the monsters in his head, so maybe he stabilized because of Talon fighting back against the monsters. It's not actually clear, but it was very much felt like a reference to that Lower Decks bit where Mariner's like, just wave the shiny light over it, it'll make it feel better, kind of thing.
Very tongue-in-cheek with how Star Trek uses some of its technology, but I agree with you. Just because she's a doctor doesn't mean she's going to know the first thing what to do with 25th century technology. So, but I could see Rios was just, he was so far out of his comfort zone or element. Like, okay, this is, even though this is a medical device from the future, I'm not a doctor.
I actually think so. If I'm trying to rationalize it, I actually think that Rios did it this way on purpose. He could have done it himself, but he wanted to get her to understand that these things are real. This isn't in her head, right? All you have to do with the neural oscillator is put it near a head of someone whose brain needs it, and it automatically does it. It's all automated, right? But he wanted her to feel like she's a part of this or something to get her more on his side of like, this is real. This isn't craziness. I'm the good guy. You just saved his life with this thing.
Okay.
That's more what I'm
Okay.
thinking is going on, but still, it's silly that he didn't just save Picard's life himself. But whatever.
I get you.
And then we get the best line from the episode to me, which Teresa asks Rios if he's from outer space, and his response is, "No, I'm from Chile. I only work in outer space." Straight reference, obviously, to Star Trek 4 with Kirk saying the same thing of being from Iowa. He just works in outer space. So great, love it. That's the kind of like
That's what I'm talking about.
kitschy stuff that just sells me on stuff.
I like those callbacks. Okay, so the second thing we got from Star Trek 4 this season,
Not the second. There's been way more.
besides dude on the bus and his boombox, and now
I'm sure there's more. So one of those threads on Reddit that just lists all the canon like references probably has like 30 by now.
okay, yeah, I don't go there anymore. So yeah, you could be very much correct.
Dag, you got anything?
No.
Okay. All right. So back to the dungeon. Talon finds the princeling on the floor. She kicks the door open, picks him up, and takes his hand as they like walk through that doorway together. So back to La Sirena. Raffi is happy that the replicators still work and the transporters, even if they can't use the ship's main sensors and main computers. So she's got 2 cups of coffee. You know, Seven picked up her coffee addiction from Janeway at some point. Good to know. Seven thinks that she's cracking the encryption. It's based on code that she had seen as part of the collective. So even though Seven doesn't have her enhancements to make her better at things, she still has her memories of her time in the collective. So she's just working through it. She may not be able to calculate like spatial jump trajectories for orbital insertion through time, but she can still remember how to hack something. So cool.
And she still knows what she can recognize it when she sees it.
Right. Yeah, she's still an incredible character, even if she doesn't have her Borg enhancements.
Mm-hmm.
Seven talks about how she thought that Jurati had purged all the Borg code, but she found this recording of Jurati dressed for the gala, introducing Borg code into the ship through her fingertips. Terrifying there. It also suggests that there is something physical with Jurati. It's not just all in her head. So that is a new bit of information for us. So
where she's at should be a little more of a priority to figure out than they have up to this point, almost not even noticing that she's, well,
which I think is the point of this scene, right?
Yeah.
It's them realizing, oh shit.
We forgot someone. There she is. Oh shit. Looks like she's been assimilated.
Yep. All right, so back to the subconscious. Picard's office just melts away. He's back in his house. Talon and the princeling enter. Picard is confused again to see her. They start talking a bit. The psychiatrist is now here, and he's revealed to be the monster by the prince. And here's where we figure it out that, you know, the psychiatrist is Maurice Picard, his dad, right? And he starts explaining the whole thing about his mother isn't just the perfect image. She's also deeply troubled. So I think it's a reference to her potentially having like schizophrenia or maybe multiple personalities or something to that effect. So
that's what I picked up from it.
Yeah, it's interesting though, right? Because a lot of kids do have rose-tinted memories of some people and then very negative memories of others, when the reality is probably a bit more neutral. So
do you think that she possibly had Munchausen syndrome?
Munchausen's
or is it Munchausen by proxy? Let me look it up. I don't know. Just to make
I was
sure.
really upset with this twist. I really did not like it.
This is what I love about Google. I typed MU and it finished with Munchausen syndrome.
Because it's
This is
Probably looked
scary.
it up before.
I've never looked it up.
It's listening to you, Jay.
So Munchausen is when you use some sort of like illness or you cause illness or disease in yourself to get yourself attention. You make up having trauma. You do
Yeah.
that, right? Munchausen by proxy is when you use your child to do it, right? You get your
Right.
child, you get them sick so that they have attention and you get attention by proxy.
Okay, so it doesn't feel like it's that.
My dilemma with the way this is shaping up is, first of all, I let my personal feelings about what I know about Patrick Stewart's childhood take the reins there. And if you're not familiar with Patrick Stewart's childhood, if you're listening to this, Patrick Stewart's mother was abused by his father, and he has become a major advocate in supporting women in abusive situations and abusive relationships and things like that. I was thinking they were going to incorporate that into this season of Picard to show that Maurice wasn't a great dad. We already knew Maurice wasn't a great dad, but we didn't know anything about Picard's mom other than one imagined hallway scene in one episode 35 years ago. And I was really, really hoping they were going to go with the domestic abuse angle, because it's not something that's represented a lot in media in general and science fiction almost ever. Again, there's that BSG reference when Kara was living with what's-his-name for however long on New Caprica. But flipping it into a mental health issue where Picard just incorrectly blamed his dad for his mom's issues, I don't like it. I don't know if I can really put my finger on why, but I feel like if they were going to take this angle, what they should have done is misdirected us into thinking mom had some kind of mental health issue at first, and then flipping it into it being the domestic health issue with
We
dad
might still get that.
gaslighting young Picard into
might
thinking
still get
that's
that.
what happened. I would be okay with that too. If they flip it again, sure, that's great. But, again, and then there's the in-universe justification. Why in the 24th century didn't we just take mom to somebody who could help with this? Why does dad have to lock her in the tunnels below Chateau Picard so she can handle these episodes herself? If they flipped it into an abuse issue, we know that abuse stems from power seeking.
Right.
And somebody who has abusive tendencies and power seeking may not pursue mental health issues. There is a thing called battered woman syndrome. It could exist in the 24th century where Jean-Luc's mother, Yvette, I'm going to go with Yvette. We haven't actually said her name, so she actually may not be Yvette Picard. She could be another person, and Yvette could be stepmom. Who knows?
True.
But if they had gone with the abuse angle, dad with the power issues is keeping mom from reporting these things, and he himself is refusing treatment because he doesn't think anything wrong with him, that would speak more loudly to the issue. And if they bring that up later, that's okay, that's great. But again, that just delays the progress of the actual plot, which is what's Q's ultimate plan and why do the Soongs play into that?
Yes.
We just don't know enough about Q's real plot here
Right.
at all.
And they're taking a sweet ass time getting to it.
They
Another
sure
frustrating
are.
thing.
We're doing character growth like we've never done it before. We just
So,
had to
I
wait
mean-
until Jean-Luc was 100 and something years old, or almost 100 and something years old.
So here's the problem, right? With seasons being only 10 episodes, 12 episodes, 15 episodes, right? Having an episode devoted to character exploration feels dramatically wasteful almost, right? Whereas when you have an episode in a season or 2 episodes in a season of 26, it feels like it's a lot less. Even though we had way more time devoted per season in TNG than just 1 or 2 hours per character.
It's funny you say that because I'm immediately thinking of the Dark Page, and it's not an episode that I care about a lot, but it gave Deanna and Deanna's mom a ton of character growth in an episode
Yes.
that takes place like this. Character in somebody's head trying to deal with traumas. Nice bottle episode, by the way, because it takes place entirely on the Enterprise. But it is not one of my favorite episodes for that reason. deal with Mama Troy's traumas, and it doesn't have an impact on the crew other than it's kind of a shoehorn Deanna episode, but it's really a Loaxana episode.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you could do that. You had more time to be able to have an episode or more devoted to each character each season.
Even a secondary character.
Sure. Right. It just, to me, I'll say again, it feels like, and this is where I hope that all of this comes to a point where it was worth it. And the more we talk about Picard's mom and what she went through, kind of a gaslighting situation, or Picard remembers her a lot differently because he had these rose-colored goggles on for his mother, but wasn't really seeing the full picture and just took what he saw at face value. And I'm wondering if that then again plays into, if that is what plays more into his reaction to the faceless Borg queen on the Stargazer, is that he's taking a face value type situation. He did not consider that there was a different story. Like, for example, he was transfixed on his dad being the bad guy and his mom being this perfect person. But what he didn't realize was that it wasn't that. It's not that he was a bad person per se. It's just that was how that was just how it ended up looking.
Yes. As a kid, you don't really understand that, and you're trying to have fun with your mom when she has one of these episodes, and then suddenly she's terrified of something, and then your dad comes running and disappears with her while she is having this episode, and it sounds like dad is doing horrible things, but mom's having an episode and dad's just trying to help her through it while also protecting his kid from anything mom might do.
Yeah, well, I mean, she got pulled out with a straitjacket on her, for Christ's sake.
For all we know, all he was doing was trying to, like, give her medicine, right? Like, maybe she has, like, a lithium equivalent in the 24th century,
Right.
and she just has to take her medicine kind of thing. Like,
Mhm.
we don't know. We just don't know. Which is why I really like the fact that Talon and Picard go through this dialogue, too, of, like, there's more to this story, isn't there? And I'm hoping that they do tell us more.
I would appreciate that.
So I think that we're just kind of jumping to conclusions based on incomplete knowledge at this point.
We
but
have
that's
nothing
what we do.
else to do.
That's what we do. So okay, but here's also where we hear that line again about 1,000 ways to die down there, which is a fair point. I hadn't really realized the connection between, like, die out there space, die down there, the tunnels rather. So
Right, and I mean,
yeah.
these were tunnels that Picard said his family had escaped through during the Nazi occupation. So we don't know what's down there, which is why they're so perilous. And we even see that when Picard steps through the plank and he cannot escape.
yeah, and he gets stuck there until Maurice pulls him out of it. So
I kind of had a hard time with that.
why?
But I'm not gonna. Really? He couldn't get his foot out of that?
He's having a panic attack. He's freaking out. Like, stopping and thinking about how to get your foot out of something is...
There's an old horror story, and I'll NSFW our content warning. This is just a scary story from one of those scary stories to tell in the dark. But basically, it's about, a woman and her friends were at a cemetery and they were joking around. They're like, "Oh, go to the gravestone and stab a knife in it and say some weird incantation and then come back." And so she goes and she stabs the knife and she says the incantation and she gets them turned around and something grabs her and she can't get away from it and she falls over and she actually dies of fright. And her friends come and find her. She had stabbed the knife through her dress into the ground, and that's what she thought had grabbed her. Picard's in a similar situation here. He's stuck. He can't. He's just paralyzed with the fight or flight, and the rational brain is not saying, "Hey, dislodge your foot, bro. You're good."
Yeah, he's terrified that a monster is going to eat him or drag him into the cellars or throw him over the side of the moat filled with alligators, right? Like, he doesn't
Well,
know
if
what's
that's the
going on.
case, then get your damn foot out of the thing and run.
When was the last time you felt
It's just a
real
rational
paralyzing
thinker.
fear?
When I
right?
felt real paralyzing fear,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think I ever have.
Jay is
And
6'5".
Right. I'm 6'5" over
He
300
is the
pounds,
fear.
you know. Right. I
I'm
get
just
guy.
saying,
the
right?
fear.
Like, he's
There's
a
not-
little kid, right? Like, that's a little kid whose mom just ran off while screaming that something was coming to get them,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and he's now stuck, and he's hearing banging noises from her running around, and he's afraid that something's going to happen. I don't think rational maneuvering your foot is gonna happen.
And maybe you're right. I can't relate to that because honestly, I can't think of any scenario that I've ever been in that was
It's
the
been
perilous fear, the thought that, okay, this is it.
it's been like
I'm gonna
35 years since Jay was less than 6 feet tall.
I mean, my only time where I was in that situation, it didn't matter if you were 300 pounds of pure muscle, it wouldn't have made a difference. I was on an airplane, so being
Mhm.
300 pounds probably would make things worse.
Nah.
So,
Oh, no. Okay, I take it back. I remember when I didn't know it at the time, but when I had a kidney stone, I thought that was it, that I was going to die because I didn't know what it was, and the pain just throughout the morning, this day just kept going up. And when you don't know what it is, and it got so bad that like I had my face in the toilet, you know, I threw up. I've never been in that kind of pain that's that much that gives that reaction. So at that point, yes, you're right. I did actually experience that. I thought, this is it. I don't know what this is. This is it. I'm dying. But then later,
I'm
you
with
know,
you. I had a kidney stone. It's awful.
Oh yeah. Well, now that you know what it is, like, okay, yeah. But when you have no idea, that kind of strikes the fear of God in you.
Yeah. No, mine was tiny, like grain of sand type of thing, and it was
Oh.
still felt miserable.
Yeah. That's be surprised. So
I never
Yeah,
had a kidney stone. I just had childhood trauma.
right.
All right, so moving on from the Beyond Kidney Stones podcast.
Not Kidney
Uh,
Stone podcast.
BKS coming at you live.
So, anyways, at this point is when Talon starts to put things together. That there was no monster chasing Yvette, but Maurice said that there was and always had been. The thing that was chasing her was her own and personal demons. It was her schizophrenia. It was her mental issues that were the monster chasing her. It was never me, Maurice. So, and here's where Jean-Luc, the older one in this scene, admits that maybe he never really knew his father.
Hmm.
Which
I think the father has become a scapegoat. I don't think this is the
Sure.
first.
But again,
media.
you don't know the whole story here. There might be more to it that brings
True.
it back to, oh, so maybe the father could have done more, and that he's part of why this is so bad.
Hmm. That is why I hope that it's this experience that plays into this lesson he's supposed to learn, right? Because he had his father labeled as the bad guy his
Right.
entire life, but he didn't know the full story. Like, again, with what happened on Stargazer. Didn't have the full story, just went off of what he quote unquote just knows. But he was wrong.
Makes sense.
So
I hope that's the tie-in with this whole experience.
I think the next bit is actually the tie-in. So
Okay.
the next little bit that happens is the two old Picards are gone. Then it's just Talon and the young princeling Jean-Luc. And then she tells him, "You're going to do so much with your pain. You will save worlds with your pain." Jean-Luc, the little one, pulls out a key from his pocket, starts walking towards the door where his mom is pleading from behind it, and then gone. End scene. Right.
Mhm.
I think that that's supposed to be our hint as to he should have unlocked whatever was going on with the faceless queen. Remember, her entire face looked like clock gears shifting and such, right?
Yeah.
Why this particular scene about like a key? I think that that's something that we have to remember. Whatever memory he's got suppressed with his mother, behind that door, it should have been something he remembered to understand what the Queen was doing. Something there, I think, is what we're looking at.
Okay. I can go with that.
You're frowning at me, Dag. What are you thinking?
No, this is not a frown of I disagree. This is a frown of I buy it.
Okay, cool. I'll take it. So back to so at this point, Picard regains consciousness, Talon regains consciousness, and they're out of each other's mind. Rios and Ricardo are drawing on the wall outside with chalk. Ricardo drew like a big comical rocket ship, and then Rios has drawn La Sirena, and Ricardo calls him the spaceman alien who can make things appear out of thin air. So adorable little childlike scene. Rios jokingly scolds him about, like, you're not supposed to talk about that, you're supposed to keep your mouth shut, kind of thing. But I am a human, which is, again, adorable. Teresa then points out, like, someone who's trying to convince my child that they're human, I should probably not allow near my child.
The fact that you have to say you're human means that you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her instincts are good. Rios tells her that. But he's, again, doing the whole, like, I'm a good guy, you gotta trust me. And then he's like, fuck it. You want to see something cool?
I know, right? That was why I had this whole feeling of he just said fuck it to the whole not corrupting the timeline thing.
I mean, so we know that they can wipe memories, because that's what they did with...
These aren't the Men in Black.
No, they did it with Cochrane, remember? Or at least his memories get kind of scrambled so he doesn't remember things.
What?
No,
So
we don't do it with Cochrane. We do it with Kern.
Yeah, it did with Kern, but not with Cochrane.
Memory. We blast Sarjenka's memory. We
did a lot of memory blasting, just not with Cochrane.
We did a lot of memory blasting, but Cochrane's fine.
I thought they fucked with Cochrane's memory.
They didn't fuck with Cochrane's memory.
No, it was that.
It
was that no one believed
Cochrane's
him.
Alcoholism.
Yes, his alcoholism was why he was talking crazy about these cyborgs from the future and all that stuff.
But we can skip past that.
Yeah, let's get past
that. Memory science being what it is, yes, we can absolutely modify their memories.
Mm-hmm.
Point is, maybe he's going to wipe their memories, maybe not. But either way, he's showing them this La Sirena. It's his ship. As soon as they arrive, like, she drops her coffee cup, he drops his rocket ship. They look around. Then Ricardo's like, I'm going to go touch everything, which is my reaction too, dude. I get
it. Bad. Don't touch everything when there was Borg on the ship.
Oh, yeah, they're going to find that out the hard way.
There's already a Borg Queen wandering LA. Like, how much worse could it be in La Sirena?
I know, right?
All right, so cut back to the streets of LA. Seven and Raffi are trying to find Andrade. They found some recording of her from, like, a security camera of her, like, smashing the glass of a bar called Deacons.
Mm-hmm.
And Raffi wonders if she's still there. They go to the bar. The place is... It's like 6 or 7 in the morning, so it's obviously not open for people. But they do see the smashed glass everywhere.
Which somehow was not swept up yet.
I mean, it's LA. Doesn't seem crazy that they wouldn't have swept it up in, like, that same morning.
You're giving them a lot of credit, but okay.
I think you're giving them too much credit, actually, that they'd clean up, like, broken glass on the street.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's
that's
LA.
a hazard.
It's LA.
Y'all are East Coast, and you got a bad impression of LA.
I know we must.
Don't have a good impression of LA. You tell me.
So there'd be liability. The business would be liable for that glass.
Yes.
If they didn't sweep it up, they'd be liable for any injuries sustained by anybody walking by. So they would absolutely have swept up that glass.
That place would not have. It wouldn't have closed without someone having gone outside. But yeah, I think you're right.
Unless, of course, Girardi just wrapped everybody up in nests and assimilated them all, and they're in the basement somewhere, and nobody had the opportunity to clean up that glass, because we don't know yet.
We don't know what happened there, right? Maybe she picked up the pool table and threw it at the dude who was playing pool that looked at her and flirted with his eyes.
Oh, man.
Right?
Maybe
she,
that would be the number one way to get extra endorphins.
Yeah.
Because that's what she's going after.
Yeah, maybe that's what she did. Maybe she went and had sex with a dude who looked at her, right? Like that's something.
Yeah, Dag, you're right. I think for us on the East Coast, we see the West Coast and LA as like the first part of Demolition Man.
I gotta what?
That's what
It's San Angeles.
I don't want to say that about the West Coast. I just want to say that my experience in like suburban LA, it has always been kind of grody. Honestly,
This isn't even
Like-
suburban. This is like downtown LA. This is like the grody bar. You know the what do they call
Dive
this?
bar?
Dive bar. Yeah, this is the dive bar where like
Mhm.
smoking is still allowed surreptitiously.
Right. Yeah, I get all that, but I'm sorry. I'm not buying that this glass wasn't swept up.
That's why.
Whatever.
A
It's
minor
part of-
thing, sure.
What
but
is such a minor thing?
The
I
body
know.
just assimilated the bar crew. It's cool.
the plot completely relies on we have to have broken glass on the sidewalk at this point. Okay, whatever.
I don't think it really matters much at all. But anyways,
I mean,
Uh,
honestly, they could have just had Seven do a scan of the temporal residuum, just like they did in the first season, and that would have totally been fine.
yeah, there would have been microparticles of glass there for sure.
Yeah.
All right, but so we then get this flashback bit where Girardi actually does it inside. There's an attraction. People start telling her, "Lady, don't. What are you doing?" And then she smashes
breaks
the glass.
window.
Her eyes darken again, and we see some more nanoprobes, like visible to
Assert?
her body.
Because that's what she's going for. There, she's trying to get them to assert dominance over Girardi.
Yep. Okay, so here we get the update of Picard being told about what's going on with Girardi. I know this isn't what you wanted to wake up to, but Girardi's been assimilated. She's got a queen, and she's randomly wandering around LA, dude.
So here's what happened while you were unconscious.
A Borg queen in 2024 with no shits to give is a terrifying concept.
Oh yeah.
So we have 2 years. Y'all want to go to LA for a sec?
Oh, for sure, 100%. Sign me up.
Yeah.
See you
Go
then.
ahead and assimilate me.
We'll meet in
Just don't take
Bozeman
my
in
arm off.
39 years.
All right, so we cut back to Talon telling Picard about how Renee is fine. She's in lockdown. No sign of Q. No sign of Adam Sung, at least not yet. We saved Renee, so your future's safe, is what she's thinking. Picard is like not convinced by that. And then they start talking a little bit about like they've moved beyond personal boundaries at this point. So Talon's going to reveal something about herself to him. And she does this little hand wavy thing over her ear, and suddenly her ear is pointy again. And now she reveals that she actually is a Romulan. And usually the supervisors are tasked to look after their own race, but you know, if you can pass as the other race, the technology will help you accommodate.
This is the part that I
Spock
had
could've
beef
used
with.
I'm shocked.
that.
Tell me your beef. I'm
Big
kind of
J's
hungry.
beef.
Where's
You
the
guys-
beef?
You guys tell me. You know me well enough that you can predict what I've got a problem with. I want to see if you can guess it. Go ahead. What do you think I have beef with?
If she ever
Insert-
cuts her hand, she's dripping green.
Well, yes, but actually no.
Insert Jeopardy theme here.
Why didn't they just use a human? There are many humans they could have used for this. Why wasn't it just Gary 7 again?
Okay, I'm gonna zing you with this one. What the hell was the point of her pretending like she actually wasn't what you call it?
Romulan?
Romulan?
Eris.
She's not Laris. She's not Laris.
Laris.
She's not Laris.
Well, why does she have to be Romulan? Why suddenly does that
I
matter?
don't know.
Because she's probably a descendant of Laris. Or,
Other way around.
Yeah, an
Other way.
ancestor of Laris.
Yeah. Again, so you missed this one, Big J, but I told this one last episode. There is a theory out there that Laris, as we know her in the 25th century, is the same person as Talon. It's just that she has been a supervisor assigned to the Picards for that long, so she's just on her current assignment on the current Picard, watching over Jean-Luc.
It's like
But this is how they actually
500-year-old
met.
Romulan.
Who knows how long a supervisor enhanced Romulan can last?
Okay.
I hate that theory, mind you, but it's a theory out there.
Yeah, I dislike it. But-
the writer's asking
but I
for a
mean,
lot of good faith on this, and I
y'all
think
be like,
it's a bit
y'all be like,
much.
why does Talon look like Laris? But everybody's over here like, why do the Soongs all look like Brent Spiner?
I've had to have that argument this week too. One of my good buddies who's watching Picard is so sick of them reusing actors in Picard, and I'm like, all the Soongs look alike. It's just how it is. No, that's a stupid excuse, Renzo. I'm sorry, they just all look alike. I don't have anything else for you, dude.
It's
Maybe they genetically engineered. Maybe they're all clones of each other.
I still
maybe...
like the idea that Adam made his genetics dominant and cloned himself several times, and each cloned is briefed on what the previous one did.
When it comes to the Soongs, I think it is pretty outlandish, but I can buy it. To me, that part's just like kind of
Besides,
whatever.
Brent
But
Spiner is adamant that he gets to beat Jeffrey Combs for the most characters played in Star Trek.
I think he's probably beaten that by now.
I don't think anybody's going to pass Michael Dorn, though, for being in the most shows.
No.
No, we're talking the most different characters.
I know.
Yeah,
Jeffrey
no.
Combs.
But Michael Dorn holds the records for most episodes of Star Trek
Yes.
he's been in, because he was in 11 seasons of Star Trek.
Yeah. He's
I just-
been in the most shows or episodes.
Yeah. I think the ruse with Talon, that whole thing was more for the audience than it was for the story. Very much like in Star Trek Into Darkness, where quote unquote John Harrison revealed who he really was, and to Kirk and Spock is like,
Don't do this to me.
okay, that's what do we care? That's your name. Okay,
Don't
whatever.
do this to me. Don't bring
That
up the
was-
Jar Jar Abrams movies.
That was
Don't do this to
for
me.
the audience. That reveal was for the audience. It wasn't for the characters in the scene. Because
I agree.
Who the hell are you?
I agree.
You,
In this
you make
case,
it sound like we
though-
should know who you are. We don't.
In this case, though, I really feel like it was just to show that Talon is not a trusting person. At all.
It also shows that Talon was undercover as a human and needed to be because supervisor.
Yeah. And I mean,
Okay.
the limitation to her tech is that it's going to take it 8 hours to recharge so that she can
And
reassert.
And that's where I have beef.
Yes, I figured.
Oh,
Why would she drop her cover when it's got an 8-hour cooldown? When we're on the brink, on the precipice, the razor's edge, the world razor's edge, if you give me my pun,
Yeah.
of a xenophobic Earth about to go out. The last thing that this desolate future needs is to discover that aliens have been amongst Earthlings, humans, Terrans, whatever, for however many years, to just stoke that paranoia right into global unification to eliminate aliens.
I mean, you're not wrong.
If
but
Mestral shows up, I'm gonna be right.
Mm.
And we already saw at
Good.
the end of the episode there was a big crazy cameo.
we'll get there.
You will
We'll
get there when we get there, and I don't know if Jay's looked it up or not, but he might be surprised. Don't say anything.
Okay.
We'll get there when
We'll
we
get
get
there.
there.
Okay.
I'm with you though as to like being like a vulnerability of her revealing it, but she does have long hair, so she just like
No, that's fine. She doesn't have a bandana though. Like
Or
Like
a
Spock
beanie.
did.
right. And if the punk on the bus can help save the day, that would be great too.
That's a
Either
stretch,
way.
but yeah.
I feel like if what was her name? T'Pol's great foremother.
I don't
Uh-huh.
remember her name either.
Forgot her name.
But I know who you're talking about. Same
Yes.
episode.
Yeah, she could also hide her
Carbon
hair.
Creek.
Yeah, Carbon Creek. She could also hide her pointed ears with her hair for like years, maybe that she was there. Who knows? Months at the very least. I feel like Tamir. That was her name. Tamir.
And another character who reprised the role of an ancestor who looks the same.
Yes.
Totally
that's right.
okay.
Jolene Blaylock.
We have
True.
precedent. It's not an issue.
Some humans have fucked up ears. She's got a fucked up ear. Move on.
Hey, yeah,
Mhm.
totally. Got head caught in a Chinese rice scraping machine.
That's probably not a modern day appropriate excuse anymore, but
It was 1930. No one
I
was
know.
gonna believe it then.
okay. But yeah, so she hides her truth, covers fears with her hair. Picard goes, "Aha! I knew it. You must be an ancestor or something." So, good bit story there.
Okay. Ancestor. Okay. I don't know why I didn't think of that as giving him a little bit of credit, but yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's a decent enough explanation, except for the fact that they really do look identical. Like, a little drift is probably a bit
But
more
so
realistic.
do
But like what Dag said, there's precedent.
Foremother, all of the Soongs.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Maybe just Vulcanoids just kind of look a lot like their parents, except for Spock and Cybok. But yeah.
And Michael Burnham.
By a lot.
Ooh.
But yeah,
I mean,
so
the Spock line definitely is distinct all the way from Scone, Solkar, Sarek, Spock. Yeah.
So the really interesting thing about this scene though is at the end where Talon and Picard are discussing like why did he go through this? Was this part of the lesson that Q wanted you to learn? His mother at one point told him there's no better teacher than one's enemy, and he thinks that that's what's going on here. Q did want him to learn this. I don't know if Q wanted him to learn this because Q is a trickster god, but it seems an interesting suggestion that it might be related to why they're going through all this.
Well, that's another thing that I've kind of noticed in this season. To me, that seemed kind of odd, is that Q just noped the hell out of the whole situation. Like, he's not really involved in what he's doing like he was in Tapestry or
Q
Encounter at Farpoint or Q or in any of previous Q
episodes. He doesn't
episodes.
have his powers here though, right? Like something's wrong. Something is wrong with Q.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. There's more info to be revealed here, to be honest. I don't know. So yeah, I just think it's interesting that they're trying to figure out Q's motivations just as much as we, the audience, are, and I like that.
But and especially when we get to the last scene, which I'll expand on more
We're
there.
3 scenes away from it at this point. So
Okay.
So our next bit is Picard goes to 10 Forward Avenue to meet with Guinan. He apparently just kind of like presumes their friendship. He doesn't even say hello, nothing. So Guinan like calls him on it. And I love the acting from Ito, I believe is the actress's name, Agayure. She does an incredible job of being Guinan in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
But so the point of this scene is Picard's asking her to summon a Q. And she's like, are you sure you want to summon a Q of all things? We get a little bit of interesting Elorian history, that there was a Cold War between the Elorians and the Q Continuum. They struck a truce. The way that they sign the peace treaty is by recording the moment's sound inside of a bottle. And that's how they can summon it, or summon a Q, rather. Some Qs... This goes back to the episode where they ran into each other in TNG, right? Some Qs are more respectable than others, so she's definitely had experience with various ones. So we just know she doesn't like John Delancey Q at all.
I really, really liked the further exploration of the relationship with Elorians and the Q. I'm glad that there was. I still am not sure how there was equal enough in a way that it was a Cold War, that there was a truce or something that needed to happen. What is it about Elorians that the Q Continuum was brought to a negotiation table? They're the Q. It was like they don't have to bother with any of that, but with the Elorians they do. Why?
Elorian time sense screwing with the Q's plans to do stuff. That's the best thing that I can acknowledge. We don't know a whole lot about Elorian powers.
Right.
But we do know that even by 24th century, Q is ready to like duke it out with Guinan in a bar.
Yeah, they were about to throw hands in a bar fight.
and he's not looking super confident. He looks like he's ready for it, but he doesn't look like he's like excited to do it or anything. It's not like it's gonna be.
And he tries to outsource it to Picard and be like, Picard, get rid of her, get her off your ship now.
Yeah, she's an imp, right? So yeah, no, it's. I don't know why the Elorians terrify the Q. My headcanon for the longest time has been something along the lines of their listener abilities. Right, and this kind of backs it up a little bit in the scene. If you think of space as having like a sound or a chord or a vibration, right? Think of it as like its quantum signature. Maybe the Elorians are able to like thicken the space between dimensions or thin it at their will, and by thickening it, they nullify the Q's powers or something.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I need to know that particular detail.
They probably won't, honestly.
No, probably won't. To me, it's good enough that there is an acknowledgement that there is a thing between the Elorian and the Q. I don't need the details. I'm just glad that there's actually history there.
Acknowledgement to it. Yeah,
yes.
It's not just more random musings. But yeah, this was a pretty interesting scene. Just the scene where she uncorks the bottle of peace and then yells, screams along with it, making some pretty unearthly sounds, and then no Q.
Yeah, and that was supposed to work, and that further gets me on the side of thinking that Q has lost his powers.
Yep.
But what Adam Soong has to do with it, and what putting Picard in this situation has to do with that still escapes me, but it seems to be, we don't know why, but we know Q has lost his powers again.
Yeah, it's not the first time he's done this.
Right. And this may be natural causes. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe this just happens to Qs of a certain age. Maybe there's a Viagra equivalent he's trying to get soon to make him.
Wanna know something that probably only I and maybe a couple of other people would notice in this scene?
What's that?
At the end of it, when nobody shows up, Guinan is holding a glass.
Yeah.
And it's a very Star Trek looking glass. It's probably a vase used as a prop, as they are oft to do. But that glass type is the same glass type that Guinan was using when she was mixing the beverage in 10 Forward in Time Zero, when she was convincing Picard that he had to go on the away mission or they would never meet. Another time travel episode reference.
Or that they just have those props everywhere, like they do with the thing that's got the red lights on it, the cylinder. It's you know what I'm talking about.
It's unintentional that Guinan and Picard are in a time travel episode at a bar, and the glass that is the same glass that she had in Time Zero is not this glass. And I can see Renzo's lights flickering. He's like
I'm with you.
Looking at.
I'm looking at it.
He's like, I want to see this glass now.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's just me who was like, I think it was a Sumerian sunset or something that she was trying to mix, and it was very delicate. And she punctuated her point, like, if you don't go on this mission, we'll never meet, by destabilizing the ingredients and it evaporating in the glass. Mm-hmm. It was a very important moment there. And
readily available prop or an actual message?
You decide.
A meaningful tie-in. Audience, you decide.
Either way, the scene is pretty cool, but I think at the very end of the scene where Guinan looks legitimately confused is kind of telling, right? Like, we don't know how many times she's had to summon a Q, but it has always worked, and it's like the symbol of their truce. Suddenly, the thing doesn't work. Does that mean that their truce is broken too? Like, there's implications of this scene, and it looks like Guinan is just starting to figure it out.
So the summoning, does it just summon? It just summons a Q. Can you specify which Q you want to have show up?
It says your friendly neighborhood Q.
It's either going to be Corbin Burnson or what's her name from Amanda, Olivia Diabo.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just sad that Susie Plaxton didn't show up because I love her Q.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I
was not talking about the puppy.
Yeah. Okay, so cut to our next scene. We've got Raffi and Seven continuing their search for Girardi. here's where they're actually outside of Deacon's and like in the shattered glass, or look at the shattered glass on the walkway. She grabs like a random
Glass.
beer bottle and like
Shatters it.
throws it on the ground. And that's when she realizes that it was about giving herself an endorphin rush, which allows for the nanoprobes inside of Girardi to circulate faster and take over more of her body. Raffi asks how long until she's strong enough to begin assimilating people. Seven doesn't know. It's a very honest kind of answer. But this is an entirely new kind of Borg queen who's going to start a new Borg empire, starting with Earth, long before humanity is able to defend itself. So that's when Seven goes, they may have just doomed the future by bringing her back here, and that they need Picard's help.
Yeah, they.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Yeah.
Time travel. This is what happens.
Yeah.
Star Trek.
They did-
First
Yeah.
contact.
First contact. You did it to yourself. That's what you did. You are the reason for your downfall. It's like a predestination paradox. Again, kind of. Time travel is just, oh my God, gives me a headache.
Yeah, everybody.
I think that's kind of the point.
They
Like that's
acknowledge
Yep.
it.
yeah.
Yep.
All right, so cutting back to Guinan and Picard, they're talking about how normally when an Elorian summons a Q appears. It's just how things go. And then the doors bells at the beginning of the bar like ring. And Picard goes, is it Q? And then she puts up her hands like my background shows, and the whole stance from I think it was
Q who?
Tapestry. Oh, Q who?
No,
Q.
yeah, Q.
Okay, and then is like, nope. So just a random guy comes in, a brown suit. He looks kind of nondescript, and he says that he's celebrating and just asks for one drink. And then Guinan relents, and she has to figure out like what he wants to drink. He looks like the kind of guy who would order a bourbon when he really just wants a nice white wine to cozy up with some boring ass nonfiction. The man chuckles and was like, yeah, I mean, I'll take the white wine, but it wouldn't be nonfiction. He enjoys science fiction.
I'm gonna say bullshit.
So
I mean, not every. I mean, that's a little too accurate for a bartender. You just walk in.
She's been serving drinks for hundreds of years. Come on, give her some credit.
I've been given a lot of credit for this episode already. I'm
You're a
like,
child
I'm out of,
compared to her.
It's
Give her some
easy.
I'm out of
credit.
credit to give.
it's easy to predict what the basic white guy is going to order at the bar.
Bourbon, yeah.
Okay.
It's just
A boring
easy.
middle-aged white dude in a brown suit that looks like a civil servant.
She had,
Yeah.
Seems
she
about
had
right.
two choices: white wine or LaCroix.
No, he doesn't look gay. He doesn't give off gay vibes, so not the LaCroix.
So I have to ask.
I'll bet you she's got quite a gaydar.
I gotta
honestly.
ask. I
Yeah.
know Renzo. I know you know the answer to this, so just don't do anything. But Jay, do you recognize this guy?
I do.
You do.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I
We're
do
gonna-
recognize the guy.
We're gonna get there then.
Can I say it yet?
Just no.
No, we're about to get. Okay.
We're about to get there. We're almost gonna get.
We're almost there. All
Okay.
right. So at this point, when he's talking about how much he likes science fiction, he pulls out a cell phone, shows a video of Picard beaming into the hallway or an alley.
the alleyway.
Yeah, like a little alley or some shit. And then Guinan immediately starts laughing, and Picard starts laughing too about how she's got this glitchy camera and how it would show people appearing out of nowhere. And the man's like, yeah, oh, okay. Then he pulls out his FBI badge, and the place gets raided by FBI agents with guns. And Picard grabs his comm badge and chucks it into the corner while they are cuffed and taken into custody. End of episode, and I was really mad.
And that's how we close the loop on when we were talking about like Rios beaming away, and I was defending it by saying like they don't know what's happening there. He's just a beam of light. He disappears. They don't know if he's actually gone somewhere else or if he's just dead. Well, now we have the other side of the loop. We can see people appearing out of these beams of light, so we know that they're teleporters of some kind. And The FBI would absolutely want that, especially if we had someone like this guy who we might speculate who he might really be.
Hold on though, right? Like we know that the supervisors and such have been on Earth for decades, right?
At least
And they don't
60 years.
use and they don't use teleporters that are shiny and shimmery. No, instead they have this like cloudy smoke cube that comes up behind you and then swallows you and through you go.
And a bank vault door.
Yeah, it looks like a bank vault door, right? Really kind of creepy. How have they never been caught? What is different about their tech that gets them to snipe through this without getting caught?
Flashy thing.
Okay, so the neuralizer is really cool and Star Trek should have it.
Did you ever flashy thing me?
No. Come on, Kay.
I play with you, Kay. Did you ever flashy thing me?
No.
No.
Tommy Lee Jones, man. What a class act.
All right.
Movie.
So
the
the reveal
real
that Dag has been hinting at for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Jay.
Okay, so I know what you guys are talking about. Yes, I get that. It's the we're tying it into the fact that okay, this character may be the one that this actor played in Voyager, who was like the first officer on the timeship Relativity. Okay, so here's what I'll say about that. One of the other things that Star Trek has set as a precedent, in addition to all the Sooms or Brent Spiner, yes,
yeah,
reusing actors, which it's kind of like they're able to use a misdirect that they didn't intend on having. It just ended up getting built into the franchise that actors have been reused in different roles. So now
we've got we already talked about it. Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Combs has done it. We've seen Robin Curtis twice.
Yep.
You know, and even in this season, in the I think the first episode, when that admiral shows up at Picard's estate and is like, there's a weird voice calling out to you, you need to go investigate it. The actress who plays that admiral was a transporter chief on TNG 35 years ago, and she's not the same character. So there is a precedent to say, yes, we reuse actors, and also, just because we reuse actors decades apart doesn't mean they're playing the same character.
Right, and that's why it's very hard for me to say that this is the same character or someone different. It's because of that precedent that Trek has used the same actors in different parts. So I don't know.
None of us know. None of us know.
Yeah, it could just be it's the same actor. That's it. In the story.
Here, I'm going to ask it here, but audience also comment in the chat. Jay, Renzo, just raise your hand. Do you want this to be a new character? Yes. Do you want this to be the captain of the Relativity? Yes. For those of you listening, that is all three of us are in agreement there. Yeah, okay. So I appreciate
unanimous that we
optimism.
wanted.
Yeah.
Here's why I think it actually is. So again, this may be misdirection. You're completely right, Big J and Dad.
Twilight
It
Zone
might be.
theme behind this.
But the name of the agent is Agent Wells, right? And the Relativity it says it in the credits. The Relativity is a Wells class timeship.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Agent Wells kind of sounds like H.G. Wells.
Exactly. The author of the Time Machine.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, I
mean,
mean,
so good.
It's great, but it could also just be an intentional production misdirect.
Well,
like they got to get meta so the audience isn't one step ahead of them.
Yeah. I think one thing that supports the theory of him being the same character was just how much he was calling bullshit to anything they were saying. There was no, I don't think this word incredulous, he wasn't buying it for a second.
Right.
Anything they were saying. He carried himself like he knew exactly what he was looking at.
Man, it would be way
You haven't interacted
cool.
much with the FBI, have you?
I mean, that's kind
no.
of true. The FBI persists on not giving a damn about what you say because we're going to take you in and figure it out under controlled circumstances.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, people who work at the Three Letters tend to have like a serious you can't get anything past me kind of button, right?
Yeah.
It's an act,
We at
obvious.
the CIA don't have a sense of humor we're aware of.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic, and I love the preponderance of evidence that has been suggested here. Am I going to be disappointed if it's not? No, it's just going to be a regular FBI thing instead of a possible you have a Federation ally embedded in a power position that can really help here.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's him, how does the
let's-
timeline justify that?
So the only way I can think of it is, do you remember with Anorax, right? When he would erase whole planets and like civilizations from time, right?
Yeah.
They had temporal shielding.
Yeah.
Okay, we've heard that temporal shielding exists for the relativity as well. They even say it. The temporal shielding is buffeting, I believe is the line. So maybe he was in the process of on a mission transporting down when the change happened in the 29th century or wherever, and as a result, he transported back in time, and then much like in City on the Edge of Tomorrow, when he called back to see, hey, what's going on up there, his ship was gone, but he'd already made the trip.
Well, and it's also
Then he's been stuck here for however long.
It's also a little. I mean, that brings back like past tense, where they transported back in time through a chronoton field in Defiance, a blade of armor, and then also the Future's End, where
Captain Braxton got stuck in the 60s.
Stuck in the 60s, right? So,
like, who knows how long he's been here? He might have been here for decades.
Well, he's definitely decades older than the last time we saw him, and if he sees 7 and there's recognition there,
well,
there has to be. He was there when they had that mission sending her back in time over and over to Utopia Planitia or
they
whatever.
absolutely have. This is a critical moment in her development. She absolutely has to remember this guy if they see each other. That'll be the litmus test.
This is, and I have a problem with why this is a problem. Why, if there's this secrecy that has to be maintained of their mission, who they are, what they're doing, why is there any beaming in an open public area? Let's just pretend that they don't.
Over it. Remember, when they beamed off of La Sirena the first time, the ship's sensors were all still screwy. It's why Rios ended up a flight of stairs up off the ground and fell to its near death. Right? Like, they didn't have much control over it. They needed to stop whatever's causing their future. They're willing to take some risks for that.
So when that happened, when the group split up in Beam, they pretty much, like, no one ended up where they thought they were going to go. It was just a crapshoot. Like, you're going to beam somewhere. Good luck. You guys have to find each other. And that's where Rios takes a header in midair. But this beam in for Picard looked like it was very accurate enough because it was exactly where he needed to be. But why the hell not beam him into a building, something where you're not taking a chance on people seeing you?
Again, that was the same episode or the episode right after. Remember, that was just before Girardi starts playing on her own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he still wasn't completely confident on the La Sirena. I don't know why you'd want to beam into, like, a building that might have cameras inside the building just as easily as there are in a hallway or in an alleyway. In fact, there's probably more cameras inside of buildings looking at the door than there would be in an alleyway.
Also, if they hadn't have been hampered the entire step of the way, they would have been over and done with this a lot sooner. Yeah. Instead, they had to find Rios. Rios had a concussion, got fixed up, got sent out on an ice thing. I mean, there's been all kinds of significant delays in their mission here that we just didn't have in Star Trek 4. Star Trek 4, it was like, all right, we're gonna get the whales, you guys get the plastic, and you guys get the regenerating photons. Good, done, go. And 1986
Well-
also did not have the preponderance of surveillance equipment like we do now.
You're right. You're right. I don't
Like,
know.
they may not even know that there were this many surveillance equipment, right? Like, records on the early parts of the 21st century are very spotty, so they may not even have realized just how much surveillance there would be.
Well, and
They may not know that's a thing at all.
they don't have that in the 24th century.
Nope.
There seems to be there have been many arguments online about how the 24th century seems to be a lot more respectful of people's privacy in that they don't have cameras everywhere. So it's not just something incultured into them that there are cameras everywhere.
Because it's a completely different society
It's
then.
a foreign way of thinking that the people that you are walking with, working with, living with on a day-to-day basis want to do you harm. That's just not something they think about in a world that is post scarcity and all your needs are met through a little box that you just tell it what you want and it gives you what you want. Even if what you really want is to zig-a-zig-ah.
Boo! All right, Lizzie,
It's
you're
too late.
you're
It's too
done.
late. We need
Turn
to wrap
off
this
the.
up.
Yeah, we do. We need to get out of here. That was. Dag, we're gonna put you in the cancel culture box.
But yeah, so
I like
either
it.
way, as far as the episode is concerned, I think it was pretty good. I don't think it was amazing. I do think that they've drawn out some of these storylines a little longer than they fucking need to at this point.
Yeah.
But it's not bad. I do like the references. I like the way that they're showing us that, your trauma doesn't define you, but it doesn't also help you. It's not like what makes you, it's just a part of you, etc. So there's good stuff here, bad stuff there. I'm really looking forward to see what they do with Lieutenant Duquesne or Agent Wells, if he's the same person or not. So we'll see.
I think that
Oh,
I
and
had
James
to.
Callis was amazing. Sorry, forgot that one. James
Oh
Callis
yeah,
was amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was great. For me personally, I think that this episode required a little bit too much of giving credit or
Suspension of disbelief.
or a little bit too much suspension of disbelief. It's like, yes, I come in with a certain allotment of credits. I've got some gold press latinum for every episode that says, okay, here I'm going to give you credit for things that are completely like broken glass on a sidewalk that doesn't get swept up immediately. I've got stuff I can give you. Here's your credit on that. Here's suspension of disbelief. But my bag ended up being empty at the end of this episode. And when it's empty, then I think that, okay, there was too much that it took here. It's a bit on the slow side. I really feel like this episode dragged out the whole Picard and his youth thing more than it needed to. So I would have to say that, in my opinion, this feels like one of the weaker episodes so far of this season. Trying to think what ranking I would give it. Hell if I know. I mean, it's maybe 6 out of 10. I can't even think of something witty to tie into the ranking from this episode. I think it was just very, very average.
It's 3 Capricas out of 6.
Oh, that was my chance. Oh, it was right there in front of me. Shit. Yeah. What about you, Dag?
45 minutes out of a 1-hour therapy session.
Okay. So you give it a 3 out of 4. That's better than me or Big J, it sounds like. So
No, but it is still on the lower end of our things. And another thing is, like, we're talking about this from our perspective. There may be people out there who have more to deal with in terms of childhood trauma that really, really felt something in this episode. This was really powerful for them. But maybe that aspect isn't resonating with the three of us as it could with a lot of other people.
I don't have
Absolutely.
a problem with that. That's not the part I have a problem with. I totally get that. I just feel like with the limited number of episodes in the season, how many episodes are in the season, Picard?
Yes.
10?
3 more.
3 more. We've got 3 more episodes. I feel like we haven't gotten far enough into the mystery of Q and Aaron Soong And now the whole thing with this agent guy, I just feel like one,
And the butterfly crates.
and the butterfly craze. I think that not only do we not have any real sufficient answers to mysteries that we had before, you're adding more on.
You're just falling for the red herrings, Jay.
I
You're falling for the
know.
Red herrings.
But we've got 3 episodes left. I think they spent more time than they needed on the whole Picard, the childhood thing. I'm not trying to lessen. I'm not trying to lessen the topic of childhood trauma. I get that. I know it's important. I just think that for this late in the season, where you've really not explained anything, you're stretching out the big reveal. It just feels like, we don't have time for all of this. It could have been shorter, in my opinion. I could be alone in that opinion.
No, I don't disagree. I do feel like the season is kind of stretching on, but I'm also trying to wrap my mind around, okay, what are the character development moments that are happening here that are going to play into the end of the season? And hoping that we get the payoff. Again, when we were on Picard Season 1, Episode 7, we were saying the same thing. We just finished Nepenthe. Like...
Oh, yeah. The regroup and lick our wounds episode.
I mean, Nepenthe, as nostalgically cool as it was, just stretched the drama another episode out, and we still didn't get a conclusion until episode 10, when I was hoping and praying that all the things would pay off, and I was severely disappointed. So here we are again, 2 years later.
Yeah.
Let's hope it pays off.
Yeah, I do. I just have a funny feeling that the last episode is going to be where everything's just compacted all together.
I mean, but that's been the Trek tradition for since Discovery launched,
streaming.
Basically. Yeah, since streaming, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't feel like the season of Discovery really did that. It did feel more of they evened out the whole subject of the season. That it seemed pretty even. I remember
you saying at least a couple times that, when are we finally going to meet 10C? When are we going to get to see 10C? In the first 7 episodes, and then in the last 3 we finally did.
Well, right, yes.
Same thing. They backloaded all the answers.
It just feels like it feels more evenly distributed, what Discovery did this season, than what Picard is doing this season so far. I'm not seeing quite that even distribution of things. It's like it's just, you have this wave. Like it starts out hot and heavy, it goes real low, and then with 3 episodes left, we're going to introduce this major wrinkle of the FBI getting involved, and a person that may be the same one from the Relativity.
I don't think it's actually a wrinkle. I want it to be Duquesne. I don't think it actually is gonna be, right? Like, there's not enough time to introduce that twisty bit, honestly. I think that they barely had enough time to introduce the whole supervisor being the same as Gary 7 bit. They haven't done anything to really dive into it, so they probably just won't because they don't have the time. I think that they ended in future Starfleet time travel bureau into things too. There's even less time for that. I don't know. I don't think it happened. But we're running on late and rambling here.
I'm definitely open to seeing what the rest of the season brings. I hope you two are as well. We have tons of speculation still outstanding for the next 3 episodes of Star Trek Season 2, Star Trek Picard Season 2. And if you are still with us in the audience, we thank you for always going boldly with Beyond Trek Podcast. Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.